Good afternoon, and thank you all for attending today. My name is Tammy Williams, Contract Specialist for the Texas Lottery Commission. This is the pre-proposal conference for outside counsel, intellectual property legal services, RFQ number 362-2023-0005. On the panel with me today is Juanita Riley, TLC Contracts and Procurement Manager, Kyle Wolf, TLC Assistant General Counsel. If you have not already done so, please scan the QR code with a mobile device or use the link that was provided to sign in. A copy of the sign-in sheet will be posted on the ESBD, and that's the Electronic State Business Daily, and Texas Lottery website prior to the next business day. This is for sharing of information between prime vendors and subcontractors. Communication will be primarily through the ESBD and Texas Lottery's website. Emails will also be used for the RFQ. We strongly advise you to check with your IT department to ensure that our emails will not be filtered away. Some businesses block out the phrase lottery, so you won't be able to receive emails from the Texas Lottery Commission if the filter does not allow it to come through. This conference is being recorded. If you have any questions, please submit your questions in the Q&A feature throughout the conference, and we will answer in the order received during the question and answer sessions at the end of each part. Our Contracts and Procurement Manager, Juanita, will be monitoring the Q&As. We will review the recording after the conference and restate the questions and answers in the Q&A document, which will be released in accordance with the schedule of events. We will give our best responses to your questions today. However, any questions we cannot answer today will be answered in writing and will be included in the Q&A document. Please note, the written Q&A document is our final answer. Following the conference, if you think of additional questions, you have an opportunity to submit these in writing. This is your opportunity to ask questions, and we encourage you to do so regarding the requirements of the RFQ. If you are unsure of language written in the RFQ or need further clarification, this is your chance to receive the information you need. After proposals are received, it is then the Texas Lottery's time to ask questions and/or seek clarification if needed. Please note that any oral communication that would alter or amend the RFQ as written is not binding. Any and all changes or modifications to the RFQ will be made in writing and posted on the ESBD and the Texas Lottery's website. You are encouraged to check these websites throughout this process and once more before submitting a proposal. Please note that there may be several procurements posted on the TLC's website at one time, so be sure you are viewing the correct procurement for updates. This RFQ is open to any and all vendors who perform the services. To submit a proposal, you do not have to be registered on the CMBL, and that's the Centralized Masters Bidders List, be HUB certified, nor is there any approved vendor list. We will now briefly review the RFQ by parts. While we may discuss only certain sections or provisions of the RFQ during this conference, all sections and provisions of the RFQ are important, and you should read and understand the entire RFQ before submitting your proposal. You will have an opportunity after each part to ask general questions. Part 1, General Information. The Attorney General serves as the state's legal counsel. Therefore, the Office of the Attorney General, OAG, serves as legal counsel to all agencies. Agencies may not retain or select outside counsel without first receiving authorization and approval from the OAG. The OAG requires agencies to procure outside counsel through a request for qualifications. Once the agency makes a selection, an apparent successful proposer, the OAG has to approve the outside counsel contract. Generally, the OAG only allows contracts for 2-year periods or less. The TLC intends to sign a 2-year contract for the upcoming biennium, which is September 1st, 2023 through August 31st, 2025, as a result of this RFQ, and may sign an additional 2-year contract for the following biennium. This is the reason we are requiring that proposals be valid through August 31st, 2027. Please note the references to Attachment E, which is the Office of the Attorney General Standard Outside Counsel Contract as of the publication date of this RFQ. The successful proposer of this RFQ will be required to execute this contract or a version as may be amended by the Office of the Attorney General. 1.1.6. Because this is an RFQ, cost shall not be submitted with proposals. 1.5. Schedule of events. This section includes critical dates for this procurement. If there are any changes to these dates up to the deadline for proposals, an amendment will be posted on the ESBD and Texas Lottery website. 1.8. Proposals subject to the Texas Public Information Act. We are a state agency and subject to the Public Information Act, aka Open Records Act. During the procurement process, we will not release any information contained in your proposal. However, after a contract is awarded, your entire proposal is subject to this act and is considered public information. If there is any information in your proposal that is confidential and exempt from disclosure under the Texas Public Information Act, you must mark it as confidential. Examples of confidential information may be information that is trade secret or proprietary, or financial information. It is important that you mark every applicable page and/or section that you consider confidential, and, if possible, mark which exception of the Texas Public Information Act it falls under. The Public Information Act is located under Texas Government Code Chapter 552. The Office of the Attorney General also has a public information handbook on its website, which lists all the exceptions. If you have information that you consider confidential, then you need to respond to Section 1.8 and list the information. Include a brief commentary or justification in addition to marking individual sections and pages. Juanita, are there any questions for Part 1?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Juanita Riley. I'm the Contracts and Procurement Manager. And Tammy, there are no questions for Part 1.
Thank you, Juanita. Part 2, Proposals Process. As stated in Section 2.1, I am the sole point of contact for this RFQ process. All questions should be directed to me. Section 2.4, questions shall be submitted via email by the deadline in the schedule of events. Questions submitted after the deadline in the schedule of events will not be answered. Responses will be posted on the TLC and ESBD websites on or before the date listed in the schedule of events. Section 2.5, proposals shall be submitted in the format prescribed in this section. Proposals shall be submitted electronically. Proposals are due no later than the deadline established in the schedule of events. Late proposals will not be considered. No exceptions will be made. Section 2.5.1. Electronic responses shall be sent via email to procurement@lottery.state.tx.us. Proposers shall place the RFQ name and number along with the proposer name in the subject line of their email. Please submit one signed proposal and one copy of evidence of financial soundness. These must be in a searchable and unprotected portable document format, or PDF. Each PDF file attachment shall be a separate document, and clearly named. Be sure that your proposal contains responses to all sections and parts of the RFQ, and that your proposal numbering corresponds with that of the RFQ. You can provide a blanket acknowledgement for parts 1, 2, and 3. Part 4 requires a section-by-section response. Section 2.5.5. The proposer's commitment, Attachment A, and the background information certification, Attachment C1, must be signed by an officer or agent of proposer with authority to contractually bind the proposer, and the original attachments must be included in the proposal. 2.5.8. Please note copyrighted proposals are unacceptable. Section 2.6 covers the format and content for which your proposal must be organized. Letter of transmittal, executive summary, section by section response, evidence of financial soundness, proposer's commitment, attachment A, and background information certification, attachment C1. Section 2.7, letter of transmittal, stating proposal is valid through August 31st, 2027. An overview of why your company is most qualified, and include a statement accepting the outside counsel contract, attachment E, and/or any exceptions to such. Section 2.8, executive summary, should be a full and concise summary and not exceed 5 pages. Section 2.10, proposers may submit only one proposal. Section 2.11, any RFQ changes, modifications, or cancellation will be posted on the websites. Section 2.14, proposal evaluation. Scoring matrix is attachment D and will be used for evaluation of proposals in response to this RFQ. Please note there are 2 pass-fail categories: Texas licensure and good standing and financial analysis. Your proposal essentially goes through 3 phases once it's submitted. Initial assessment for compliance and completeness. It is reviewed for financial analysis and licensure, and it is reviewed and evaluated for its technical merit. If at any given time your proposal is disqualified, you will receive a notice stating such. Juanita, are there any questions for part 2?
Tammy, there are no questions for part 2.
Thank you. Part 3, contractual terms and conditions. This part refers to attachment E, which is the outside counsel contract, which includes some additional terms specific to the TLC. Unless the OAG makes updates to this document prior to execution, this is the contract that will be signed. So please be sure to read all terms and conditions. Remember that any exceptions to the RFQ should be clearly stated in the letter of transmittal, providing specific and detailed reasons for each exception, together with suggested alternative language. Juanita, any questions for part 3?
There are no questions for part 3.
Thank you. Part 4, required information. Sections 4.1 through 4.4. Although these sections seem brief in the RFQ, these sections require proposers to gather, compile, and submit a great deal of detailed documentation. Please read these sections thoroughly and provide all the information in your section-by-section response. So for a 4.1 in the RFQ, we want to see a 4.1 in your proposal. 4.5, conflict of interest. In this section, you are asked to disclose any actual, potential, and/or perceived conflict of interest. Please review this section thoroughly. 4.6, financial soundness. TLC does a thorough financial analysis of all proposals. Please provide the information requested under this section. If you feel this information is confidential, please mark it as such. This is a pass-fail category on the scoring matrix, so it is critical that you provide the requested information. Section 4.7, background investigations. TLC reserves the right to conduct an in-depth background investigation on the apparent successful proposer. 4.7.2, a background will be conducted on contractually defined vendor principals, those who will be directly involved in selling or leasing the goods or performing the services subject to this RFQ or resulting contract. And those include partners, shareholders, officers, directors who are directly involved. Section 4.7.3, background investigations may be conducted on vendor employees who meet one or more of the criteria under this section. Background investigations may include fingerprinting. The apparent successful proposer may be required to complete background forms by the prescribed time after the written announcement of the apparent successful proposer by the Texas Lottery. As mentioned before, we ask that all proposers complete and submit attachment C1 with its proposal. This is a certification that your company would not be denied a sales agent license under Texas Government Code section 466.155, which is attachment C. Juanita, are there any questions for part 4?
Tammy, there are no questions for part 4.
Thank you. Part 5, HSP. The Texas Lottery has determined that subcontracting opportunities are not probable under this RFQ. Juanita, any questions for part 5?
There are no questions for part 5.
Thank you. We are towards the end of our conference. Please submit any questions in the Q&A feature, or you can submit questions in accordance with the schedule of events. Some final reminders. All questions must be submitted in writing to me by the deadline in the schedule of events. Questions that are not submitted in writing by the time and date specified will not be answered. And if you have a question if you have a question on the RFQ process, you can contact me and I may be able to respond. Don't hesitate to ask. I will either provide an answer to the question or let you know that I cannot provide a response. Make note of all dates in the schedule of events. Proposers are responsible for checking the ESBD and TLC website for any and all notices, amendments, and Q&A regarding this RFQ. We will not directly email these to you. Prior to submission of your proposal, please review the entire RFQ carefully to ensure that you submit all required information and/or documentation. The pre-proposal conference video and sign-in sheet will be on the ESBD and the TLC's website prior to the end of the next business day. And just for clarification, when I began, I did say that it would be at the end of this business day, but it will be prior to the end of the next business day. Juanita, are there any final questions before we go?
Tammy, there are no final questions.
Okay, this concludes our conference. Thanks again for your attendance and have a good day.